Okay, well, let's get started. Today is Wednesday, 29th of April, and this is the Metal3 community meeting. We are first going to get started with a small introduction round, but before that, I would like to remind everybody in the meeting that if you want to discuss something, you can add your topic in the agenda at the end before the issue triage. So let's get going. We're going to start with a small introduction round if there's someone new in the meeting who would want to introduce themselves. I will pause now, like if that's the case. Okay, let's keep going then. The first point of the agenda that I put there is the status of our CNCF application for Metal3. So there was a meeting last week with a SIG runtime. So it went pretty okay. Like we just presented the project, and then they came back with a couple of follow-up questions. They are listed now, like in this document. So we have started answering them, and they came back again with more questions that have now been added at the end of the document. So feel free to have a look and contribute if you wish. If there's no question or remarks on this, let's keep going like this. Well, we have actually a lot of points we just want to update on what we've been doing, but because we are so few anyways on the meeting, I think we can just go through.
I have a question on status of CNCF application. Is that the application means we are making or proposing Metal3 to be part of CNCF directly?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So the current how it's going now, so we have presented it to a SIG. Now the SIG needs to review it internally, and then they are going to come up with a suggestion for the technical committee, and then we need to have three sponsors, or let's say three members of the technical committee that approve our request, and then we would become a CNCF incubation project.
Right.
Okay, so sorry, I said I meant sandbox, CNCF sandbox project. So then the next point that I put on the agenda was for Mika, but he's not joining today. So it's just the fact that we are now working on introducing cluster.ctl in Metal3 devenv. Until now, we were doing the deployment by just taking the manifest and applying them directly. Just kubectl apply. Now we are working on using the cluster.ctl workflow. Related to this, there's an update also from Kashif, but he also couldn't join the meeting, so I'm going to give it for him. So we've been working on this pivoting, like that is part of the, well, now it's move in the new cluster.ctl command. That is basically bringing the management of the target cluster into the target cluster itself. And we have been able now this week to have a first end-to-end provisioning with a successful pivoting, meaning that we had the Minikube cluster as a first ephemeral cluster that spawned target cluster, and then we use cluster.ctl to move all resources from the Minikube cluster into the target cluster. So this was successful. There are a couple of things that still need to be worked on to really streamline the process, and we're working on the documentation right now. The biggest point here is that we are working on integrating bare metal operator, just the operator, not ironic, into the CAPM3 provider. So basically, when you would do clusterctl deploy infrastructure provider CAPM3, then you would get also bare metal operator as part of the CAPM3 provider. But you wouldn't get ironic, meaning that we tried to put the boundary between the actual provider and the system that takes care of the provisioning at the ironic API. So it also means that when you're doing the move, you have to take care of ironic separately, so it's not part of the clusterctl workflow.
Okay, in that case, we need to deploy Ironic under some pod after this installation happens. Is that the mean?
Exactly. So
Okay.
with the current work that has what has been done until now, there is now a keep alive D container that can be added in Ironic. So you would be able to, while having your ephemeral cluster running, and then you spawn your target cluster, you would be able to deploy Ironic on the target cluster, then do clusterctl init to make sure that all the CAPI pieces are in place without impacting the existing cluster, because the initial Ironic would retain the keep alive D IP. Right. So then once that is done, you can do the transfer, the move, and tear down your ephemeral cluster. So there's ongoing work to do this integration of BMO in CAPM3. So some PRs are right now under development, but it depends on the clusterctl integration to get the whole workflow working properly. And once clusterctl will be in Metal3 devenv, then we will also work into adding the move as part of the test, and as part of the deployment of a target cluster on Metal3 devenv.
Okay. In that case, Ironic should be running in one pod or same namespace. In the same namespace?
No, there is no namespace dependency anymore, because basically the namespace dependency was on BMO. Bare metal
Right.
operator had to be running in the same namespace where you had your BMH. But as part of our work on this integration of BMO into CAPM3, we removed that requirement. So now BMO can watch all namespaces if needed. And because it's integrated into clusterctl, then the logic of which namespace it is watching is actually taken care of by clusterctl.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this means that if you deploy it just without using multi-tenancy, then BMO will be watching all namespaces. But behind, BMO still is configured with the Ironic API, Ironic URL. So
Right.
under the hood, you have this one BMO that talks to one Ironic instance. If you want to have multiple Ironics, then you would need multiple BMO instances that would be namespaced. In that case, you are in a multi-tenancy setup.
Right. Got
And that is supported by CAPI.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that is not a problem. You could have multiple provisioning networks, as long as you deploy the providers as in a multi-tenancy setup using clusterctl.
I see.
Okay, well then, if there's no further question on this, we can move to the update on the machine health check and remediation proposal. Ferus, you're on the call. Good.
Hi. I just wanted to give some updates on remediation. So there was ongoing work to have the remediation support in Metal3. For example, OpenShift has already this remediation logic in place that was implemented by NIR, but we wanted to have the same in Metal3, but there was some differences compared to OpenShift, because OpenShift was using CAPI v1 alpha 1 while in the Metal Cube we have 3 and 4. So for that, there was a small interest group, both from Red Hat and Ericsson, working on the enhancing the cluster API machine health check to support external remediation logic. Because currently, what cluster API health check does is that if it detects an unhealthy machine, it deletes the machine, which is fine for the cloud providers. But when it comes to Metal Cube, that's not the only thing that you would be interested, because you might want to do some rebooting, reprovisioning, and reintrospection. So that's why we decided to somehow make a proposal and see how it goes with the cluster API. For that, we opened the proposal. You see the link in the document I've posted. So, and the proposal was opened last week, and there were a couple of interesting comments and ideas how to move. So basically in the proposal, you can see that we were planning to introduce the new CRD called machine remediation request that would basically trigger the external remediation. So each infrastructure provider basically would have its own remediation controller, and then however, like how they want to do remediation is basically was up to them. So that was the idea. But right now, as I said, there were a couple of interesting concerns which still are not yet decided. And for that, there was a need to have another meeting with the cluster API folks that will happen tomorrow. So it will be at 10 a.m. On GMT 7, but for European people, it will be somewhere at 6, I guess, at 6 p.m. in the evening. And then yesterday there was another proposal opened by Andrew, who was also working that was working with us together. So right now, at the last proposal that you see, this CAPI reboot remediation enhancement. In this proposal, the idea is that we don't do the remediation on the infrastructure provider. Like the rebooting, there will be a rebooting remediation operation in the cluster API. Basically, the cluster API will have the API or the strategy included already in itself. So instead of just only deleting the machines, then basically cluster API will support the rebooting as well. But actual job of the rebooting in the infrastructure provider will be done still by the provider itself. So this is another alternative proposal that is happening. And as I said, the final conclusions, I guess, hopefully will be decided tomorrow during the meeting with the cluster API folks. So if you're interested, please join the meeting, and we hope to have some interesting outcomes tomorrow.
Okay. One question. Is this a new project we are incubating under Metal3, or it's part of BMO?
No, I think it will be just part of the cluster CAPM3. And in the,
Okay.
because the rebooting API is already in place in the BMO. It was also implemented by NIR, and it's already merged. Basically, you can do the rebooting if you request from the BMO. I mean, BMO supports the rebooting. There is already the reboot API. But the logic and all the remediation APIs are not in place. So that's why there was a need to open the proposal. Let's see how it would work at the Metal Cube.
Okay.
And Feroz, you're also working right now on a proposal for the reprovisioning, right?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I forgot that. So, but meanwhile also, I was starting to work on the reprovisioning API as something similar to the rebooting API, which is already in place in the BMO, as I said. So that is also in progress work. Yep. That's all from my side, Mile. Thank you.
Okay, no further questions? Okay, great. Then let's move to the next point. This is more like a PSA kind of thing, that the metadata and network data implementation has now been merged in V1 Alpha 4. So I put the link to the design proposal PR. So now it is possible to provide a template for metadatas or a template for the network configuration for your Metal3 machines, and then it will be populated based on the node that is being used. So it allows you to put in your templates values like the names of the machine, Metal3 machine, bare metal host, like use some index or generate some IP addresses from a pool if for the network data part. There is a small enhancement proposal that already went out to add a couple of functionality in this in this proposal, and we found a couple of like use cases where this network data is a bit limiting in the way that it's, for example, not possible to share a pool between multiple machine deployment. So we are looking into maybe adding an IPAM solution to this like metadata and network data proposal. That wouldn't be a DHCP on the network. Obviously, it would just be an IP address management solution on the CR level. So where like basically when you would be rendering the data template or like the metadata and the network data template, then you would be able to get an IP address from this IPAM solution that would then be obviously like statically allocated on that node. So yeah, that's the status for what is going on in V1 Alpha 4. Is there any questions?
No, I'll go through it. Maybe I'll have it after that.
Okay,
Why
then.
static address? Any reason?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Why static address?
Well, it's in the case of static addresses. If you have dynamic addressing in place, like if you have a DHCP on your network, obviously you do not need this solution. But there are some cases where you can't, you don't have a DHCP on your network, and you can't have it there. So in those cases, you would need like static IP addresses, and so that's something you cannot achieve in case you're using machine deployments or KCP without having an intermediary kind of like templating mechanism. So that's where the metadata and network data why we implemented this, and then this in case of no available DHCP, but you would be wanting to share a pool between multiple machine deployments for the sake of using less IP addresses. For example, if you're talking about public IPv4, you don't have that many available. So that's why we're now like trying to add more features regarding IPAM in the case of static IP address allocation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, if there's no further question, let's move to the next point. We were starting like a discussion on the scope of the V1 Alpha 4 for CAPM3. So basically, we have already done quite some major changes in the API with this metadata and network data proposal. We are like now trying to scope what would be V1 Alpha 4 for CAPM3. Keep in mind that V1 Alpha 4 for CAPM3 is completely independent of V1 Alpha 4 for CAPI, right? We're just talking about like Metal3 specific release of V1 Alpha 4, and that will probably be while having CAPI still on V1 Alpha 3. Meaning that when CAPI will switch to V1 Alpha 4, we might have to switch to V1 Alpha 5 for CAPM3. So we are going to introduce a small a gap between the two, but this is so that we do the big API changes in a separate version, so that V1 Alpha 3 is now released and stable, and now we're working on V1 Alpha 4 to do all the API changes. So for now, we are seeing like that there would be like this metadata and network data that was already implemented and the machine remediation, but we haven't seen too many other things that would go into an API change. So we are like open like to see now like if there's any request for features or something like this that would modify then the scope of v1.4 or like see how this will go. The target, hopefully like the target for v1.4 would be like in around like the same like target for that they had before for v1.4 for CAPI. So end of June, beginning of July, maybe. Let's see with that.
Okay.
Question?
No.
Okay. So then let's move to the next topic. You added something.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks to your all the reviews, which is added by community and done by the community. So I appreciate I help in the reviews. The proposal is finally merged, and as I had a discussion with Doug yesterday, maybe we are planning to set up one demo for this HCC, maybe in the next week or next week, sometime next week. Okay, so active development is in progress, and we'll soon raise PRs and hardware inspection control. That's the plan.
Okay, great. If you're planning like to do a demo, maybe we can schedule it for the beginning of the meeting of the next meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that is also possible. Can I shoot a mail on that?
Yeah, of course. Send it to the mailing list and also maybe on Slack to make sure like it covers like as as broad range as possible.
Yeah, okay. Because that way I'll get some time to test and do it.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Is there any other topic before we would go to the issue triage?
Hello. Yeah, mail. Hi, this is Sumit here. I have pasted one link in the chat. Can you just look?
Okay.
I mean, this is just a query from our side, like for the UP and the bias settings. I mean, why there is a dependency on the V4 and the V6? So in the dev environment.
Sorry, can you repeat your question, please?
Okay. Okay. So if you have a provisioning network on a V6, then you are going to prefer UFI mode, right, for libvirt firmware. And if it is not, I mean, pure IPv4, then you will go for bias. So, I mean, any particular reason for setting these things, or we can change it according, I mean, as per our.
To be honest, I'm not familiar enough with this, but there was a lot of discussion about this in one of the bare metal operator
Issue
proposal.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I can find it right now.
Or
if anybody has something to add on this.
Yeah, I mean, we are also finding it out, and the reason is like because all the time, since we are on the V4 network itself, every time we have a provisioning on the bias mode itself, and not UFI. So our CentOS images are bias capable, not UFI capable.
Yeah, so there was some discussion in this design for determining the boot mode from other data that was basically like selecting UEFI or BIOS based on some parameters. I don't know if that would like help you with anything.
Okay, we'll try to go through.
You can find some information there.
Okay, sure. Okay.
It's 7 to 8 p.m.
Okay, let me just write down something there. Okay, is there any other topic before the issue triage? Okay, then let's just go quickly through the new issues. just fetching the link. So, oh, there's not that much. There is this request to extend the hardware classification controller to detect and classify the bare metal host for SRIOV and DPDK function. So, well, this is definitely a feature.
Yeah.
What's the like kind of timeline that you would see there for the priority?
Sudeep Bhadra has added this, right? Maybe I'll discuss with Sudeep more on this, and we can define a timeline for this.
Should I put it in long term maybe for now? It can be reclassified if needed.
Yeah, sure. That is fine.
So I'm here, Sudeep here. I mean, if you have any quick query, we can discuss now or offline in chat also. Up to you. Yeah.
Maybe I'll talk to you separately because I think I have a couple of things to discuss because this is SRR and DPDK functions, and there are a couple of things we needed from introspection data and some of the things we need to add it at local cloud or what I expect in the ION. I think we have to prepare an entire proposal on this. I'll discuss you a couple of details on this. What needs to be.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Then let's go back to the next one. This was a request for adding some logs when. So basically, when the CI fails for the end-to-end tests, there was a request to fetch the cloud init output one way or another to be able to figure out what's going on there. So this is probably a feature. Feroz, what would you say?
Yeah, and long term.
Yeah,
Probably.
also, yeah. Okay, and the last one that was there. To be honest, this Metal3 Helm chart, I have no idea what this is about. So if there's someone on the call who knows about this, please say so.
Is it a deployment of Metal3? I think I saw there is a bare metal operator M chart created, and is it something related to that?
It could be. Anyways, I think then we should just leave that issue as is, and it will be triaged in the next meeting when there's more people aware of this.
Yeah, sure.
Of this, then okay. Then there was, if we just remove this no label. Okay, let me fetch again the query for the ones that are expiring. Okay, let's fetch this one first. So there was a problem with the provisioning not starting soon enough. So that was looking like a bug. And what was the latest status? Okay, let's see. Let's see later for if there's any update. And then for the Sumit, that was yours, right?
Yeah. So I have updated the recent observations. Like we are trying with the Ubuntu image because CentOS had that UFI capability issue. So we switched to Ubuntu. So now we are trying it with the VVMC nodes first, and there we are facing some issues. So we are trying to resolve those issues one way.
Okay.
That is done, then we will be able to try it with the real nodes.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the update.
Sure.
And do we have any stale issue that? Okay, quite a bit, but we're gonna get rid of them like little by little because they are going to, anyways, be closed by the PRAO setup in a couple of days. But is there anything like? I don't think there is anything new there since the last time. So yeah, okay. Well then, there's nothing to do on this.
Yeah, sure.
On this side
Yeah,
here.
sure.
So if there is no new topic to be discussed, then I guess we can just call it a day.
Yeah, hi, Mel, Sudeep here.
Sure, go on.
Yeah, so just if we have few minutes, can we discuss on that issue 485?
In which project?
Bare metal operator.
Okay, 485.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, so basically for the SRIOV, so we have to on the host during the OS build process, we have to do the driver installation and the configuration needed for the SRIOV interface, right? So isn't that something needed as part of bare metal operator? Because the bare metal operator will make the host ready, right?
Well, it's not really the bare metal operator role to do anything like loading the drivers or whatever. Like the bare metal operator is just going to take the image that you gave it and the cloud in it and start the node with that image and that cloud in it. So if you want to do anything like on the OS level, then that would have to be done as part of this cloud init config. And this is coming from other projects, mostly from cluster API bootstrap provider, kubeadm. So, but you could pass it as like this pre-kubeadm command or post-kubeadm command if you want to do something like installing a driver, for example.
So, so do you mean that like SRIOV configuration will be part of the CAP-BK, like bootstrap provider, cluster API bootstrap provider?
It would be part of the kubeadm config object in the pre-kubeadm command or post-kubeadm command, or you can give some files depending if you have a script to do everything.
Is it possible to just point me towards that config and what exactly you mean will need to be changed to specify SRIOV?
Sure. Is it clear now, like how it's not actually the role of the metal operator to do that, right?
Yeah. So what you mean is it should be passed as part of the kubeadm config, and there we have to specify the SRIOV related configuration, right?
As part of it should be given as part of the cloud init, right? Because bare metal operator is not doing anything more than turning on your host with the proper image. So proper cloud init. So it's not going to do anything once the system is booting up.
Okay, so it is part of the cloud init, and
yes,
who will consume the cloud init? Is that part of that kubeadm config?
So the cloud init is actually generated by cluster API bootstrap provider kubeadm. So let me go to the book. There is an explanation there of the process, and I think it is in the yeah, that's not exactly what I was looking for. Okay, let's try something else. Okay, so if we go to the kubeadm bootstrap, the kubeadm API, so you have a kubeadm config object, right? And in the spec, you have like the different parts that are used to build the kubeadm configuration file, like this cluster configuration, init configuration, join configuration. But you have also other fields that are used to actually build the cloud init itself, the rest of it. So you have like files where you can give some files that you would want to be added on the machine, and you can also give some commands in the pre-kubeadm commands and post-kubeadm commands. So if you would want to do any configuration related to SRIOV, I would expect it to be like done in this kind of like pre-kubeadm commands or post-kubeadm commands. And I can actually show you an example in Metal3 devenv how it is used in the V1AX integration test. We have templates. For example, well, let's take worker. They are a bit simpler. So you have a kubeadm config. Well, it's a template in that case, but you can see like what's in spec would be an actual like kubeadm config. So you have the join configuration that we were just talking about for kubeadm itself, but then you have this like pre-kubeadm command where you can do any kind of like network setup or any installation of packages, installation of drivers, installation of whatever you need or any configuration. And you can also give like as many paths as you need and as many files as you need in there.
Okay.
So that would be a way to do it.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Is it possible to share the link of these two, like the previous one where that API explanation and this one, please? This is really very helpful. I really appreciate, Mail. Thank you so much.
No problem. I'll just put the two. So this is the spec, and of course, if you want to know what is like inside this kind of thing, you can like just follow like how, like for example, this is the definition of file. How to give a file? You need to give the path, the owner, the content, and the permissions. So
okay.
Yeah, that's the two links are there now.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem. So this about this specific issue, what should we do with it then? Like, should we maybe close it or?
Yeah, I think yeah.
Or is there anything that needs to be done, like more like BIOS configuration or like something that would be specific to the hardware, not to the OS running on it?
No, I think for this specific SRIOV configuration, there will be just the driver and the configuration.
Okay, so that's the OS level.
Yeah, it's OS level. I'm
okay,
not
then
remembering anything related to BIOS for this. So yeah,
no. I don't think there would be either, but you don't know. You just need to have the hardware supporting SRIOV, right? Like as long as you have the proper Ethernet card and then you put the drivers in place, it should be.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, then I will just like that closing this because it's not related to bare metal operator. But if there's anything that comes up, like feel free to reopen it.
I mean,
sure.
I mean, just to query that, is it something related to what Zhou is working on, PR for read and bias configuration, which is in the review state right now? So there you can enable SRIOV parameter as well, or no?
Not that I know. Can you put a link to the PR that you're talking about?
292 it is. Bare metal operator pull 292. In the same document, it is there.
Okay.
The one. Whether this relates to it or
292.
Pull, it is pull, not issues.
Sorry, pull.
Yeah, pull.
Well, it should, anyways. So this one.
Yeah. So this is for red. It will not come under red. There is one for bias. 302. Sorry, 302 is for bias. So this is for red.
So 302.
Yeah, 302 is for bias. So I mean, whether that will come under bias configuration.
No, there's no.
Link is there. I mean, it is pool only, not pools.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it says it's not found.
But the Google Doc that we are referring to, it has a yeah.
So there was something about SRAV in there.
I think if it comes under enabling the parameters, then it should fall under setting the bias things, because red is not a part of it. I mean, it is not a part of red, but
Oh, there.
yeah,
Yes.
here it is. Yeah, here it is.
Okay, yeah, but that is already ongoing.
Right. So I mean, we are looking at this part, right? I mean, so that is that what you're pointing to?
Yeah, I think this is related. So what is happening here in this CRD? It's like just enabling the SRAV option.
Through bias settings.
Okay.
And you can have a look at
So-
it, and if it gives some information or some pointer to you, then you can add your comments here, so that like mail can tag it properly and close it accordingly if required.
Yeah, I think I saw it, but what I could not understand there is, okay, we are enabling SRIV there, but how are we specifying the PF and VF configuration there? That was what I was not able to.
Yeah, but that you cannot do through BIOS. This VF and PF needs to be done as part of the it's an OS level operation that you do a configuration afterwards.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So, I mean, through this, we are just enabling the SRIOV, but through the cloud in it, we are basically passing on the PF and the VF configuration, right?
At OS
Yes.
level. You're talking.
Okay. Okay. So this is also, this is then definitely needed, because unless this SRIOV enablement is done, it will not be supported, right? I mean, the cloud in it will not work with the PF and VF configuration unless this is done, right?
Except if I'm wrong, like I think you can you could enable it once because that feature is not in yet. So you could just enable it on the BIOS manually, and then like it should not be disabled afterwards. Like there's nothing that will go reconfigure and disable it, like if you have already enabled it.
But by this SRIV global enable, we are doing it automatically as part of bare metal host CRD, and so we don't have to do it manually in that case, right? And I think that's what we want. We want everything to be automated, right?
Automated, correct. So if you pass the parameter, it will be enabled when it is applied, I guess.
Okay. Okay, I think I have understood how this will be done. Maybe I will update the that my issue with both the details, and
so probably you have a look at this 302 and 290 as well, so that you will get a more idea like what is being done right now or what they're working on. So if you could correlate, you can update also the PR.
The other one you said was 292, right?
Yes. 290. Your list, 292. That is for red. So if you have something under red, that also you can have a look.
That's for the hard drive configuration.
Yes. This is for storage part. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Any?
The same thing is listed in this document as well. So if you do not find those links ready, you can just scroll down and you'll have those links.
Yeah, actually, I could put it.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any further question? Or any further topic?
From our side, I think we are done. So others can take a call.
Sorry, didn't get that.
I mean, we are done from our side, at least.
Okay, cool. Then let's just stop the close the meeting here. Like I'm going to stop the recording.